Hey guys, it's Dr. May. How are you? All right, I hope things are good in your neck of the woods. So today I want to talk about forgiveness. Now, in DBT, they don't really talk about the F word, so to speak. The equivalent, probably the closest thing is radical acceptance, but forgiveness is important and unique enough that I wanted to do a separate video on it, okay? And a lot of us struggle with forgiving, and I think we need to look at it from time to time to kind of clean house, so to speak. So I'm going to give a brief talk about that today. All right? So let's get this going here. Okay, so forgiveness. So if you look at the picture, right, it's kind of an open bird cage and the bird flew away. So what's that bird inside of us that we have locked in that's holding us back? That's the question. What are we not forgiving? What are we holding on to? All right. So in essence, there's really three types of forgiveness. So forgiving others, which is probably what we'll focus on most today, but also asking for forgiveness from others when we messed up. All right. And another one is forgiving ourselves for screwing up. So there's those three components. And we got to ask ourselves, where in these three areas am I still holding back? What am I still resentful of? And where do I need to forgive more? And maybe even what's the hardest kind of forgiveness for me? Is it hard to forgive other people or harder to forgive myself? Sometimes people tell me it's hardest to forgive yourself, right? That's a real tough one. Sometimes we're our worst critic, our worst judge, right? And we need to be a little bit lighter on ourselves. So in essence, forgiveness in a lot of ways is about letting go. There's a lot of things related to it that we need to practice letting go, such as, just holding on to that problem mentally and rehearsing it in our mind, telling ourselves that same sad story over and over again about how hurt we are or how much anger we have toward ourselves or toward whoever we're not forgiving. And we obsess about it, and it creates so much suffering. We even add on to it blame, which I have another video about, and that's suffering in itself, wanting to take revenge on the person, wanting to get back at them for what they did to us, waiting for that apology, wishing they would grovel and come back to us and beg for our forgiveness, but we have to let all of that go. The person may never say they're sorry. We may never, and even if we get it, we may not be satisfied with it. Some people, they go to court and they make their victim statement, and then the criminal says they're sorry, and they say, well, that's not good enough, or that's not an acceptable apology, or it's too little, too late, or I'm never going to get my loved one back, so I can't accept that apology. So an apology from someone is just like an invitation to allow us to let go, but it's not necessarily something that'll make us let go. We have to do the letting go, right? It's not about some external thing that has to change. Forgiveness is an internal shift. And in a lot of ways, it's not very logical. We forgive things that maybe in our reasonable mind we shouldn't forgive. But forgiveness is really for us. It's a wise mind choice about letting go of things that aren't working for us anymore. Knowing that the ongoing obsessing and holding on to this problem is just making my life worse. And it's time to release it, just like the woman is releasing those birds, okay? And, we need to move on with our life. And forgiveness keeps us stuck in the past. And we talk about mindfulness. Mindfulness is about being fully in the present. But I saw a quote once, and the quote said, if your arms are so busy holding on to the past, you don't have room to embrace the present. So in order to make room to embrace the present and even the future, we need to forgive, right? We need to radically accept what happened and let go of it and do it for ourselves, even if it's not for the other person, okay? So in essence, what I'm trying to say is it's about healing. It's about healing our wounds. And it's a mental and spiritual and emotional shift that we need to do to heal ourselves. And the best revenge we can get is by treating ourselves better than we were ever treated by anyone else. And showing ourselves that self-kindness and compassion that we never got from the person we wish we got it from. and giving us the love we never got from the person we wish we got it from. And all the positive qualities can be derived from within. And when we realize that, it's easier to let go because we're not waiting for it from somebody. Okay. And just to acknowledge that forgiveness is a process. It doesn't just happen with a simple statement that says, I forgive you. It takes time, and it's an up and down roller coaster battle sometimes, you know. Sometimes we forgive in one moment and then something else happens and we're back to not forgiving again. Just like with radical acceptance, sometimes we accept something and then all of a sudden another situation comes and we're flooded with resentment all over again. So we have to keep turning our minds back toward forgiveness, just like we need to turn our minds back toward radical acceptance. So how do we do this? First, we got to start with the intention to forgive. So even if you didn't forgive yet, you're starting with the intention of working toward forgiveness and willingness. As DBT talks about willingness and openness, opening your mind to the idea of forgiveness. And if you have a laundry list of people that you need to forgive or situations you need to forgive from a variety of people, make a list and maybe practice starting with the easiest thing or the easiest situation and see how you do with that. Don't pick the hardest thing first. You're going to feel like a failure if it's too hard, right? Start with something easy. But in essence, forgiveness is something that happens on a small scale every day, if you think about it, because we have minor slights that we have to deal with from people all the time. And, we let little things go all the time. But some of the bigger things kind of stick to us, right? And we have a hard time letting those go. But when we know how to do it with the smaller things, it's a step, and then we work our way up. So when I'm trying to forgive and I have the intention to forgive, I could only forgive as much as possible in this moment. And then I might have to come back to it in another moment and see what happens. Okay, so I have to be patient with myself with this process. All right. Another thing is that forgiveness includes setting boundaries. So it doesn't mean letting people into your life that are going to continue to harm you. You could still recognize that what they did was wrong and unacceptable and say, and I think I need to move on from you. And I don't need you in my life anymore. Or I'm going to set a very firm limit with how I interact with you so you don't wound me again. Right. And so one doesn't exclude the other. It's not like I forgive you and then I'm opening the door to being hurt again. Right. I can forgive you and then also do what I need to do to protect myself. All right. So some myths about forgiveness. So forgiveness is not forgetting something that happened or pretending it didn't happen. I clearly would want to remember some negative things so I don't encounter them again, so I can make better choices about how I deal with those people or those situations, right? So forgiving and forgetting, right, doesn't always have to go together. I could remember it without obsessing about it, but I could still let it go and not make it an ongoing part of my present reality, okay? It's not excusing behavior. It's not saying it was okay. It could be something that was really unacceptable and wrong. And I could know that and still forgive the person because I want to move on with my life and I don't want to live with that resentment every day. Again, it doesn't mean making up with the person or having to reestablish a destructive relationship. Toxic relationships need to go, right? We're better than that. We don't need that in our life, okay? But I could lovingly let the person go. And it's not papering things over. It's not, avoiding the emotions that are associated with the pain. It's still feeling it fully, but then through that process, eventually being able to move on. Okay. So it's not just a cover up. It's not just an ignoring. All right. It's an acknowledgement. It's an acceptance. All right. So here's some main steps for forgiving. All right. So first we have to acknowledge, right? We have to recognize what actually happened, radically accept that it happened, even if we don't like what it was. All right, opening our eyes to the reality and getting down to the truth. It involves a grieving process. So maybe the thing that caused me so much pain created a lot of disappointment in my life. Maybe, I was hurt by a parent and I have to grieve the fact that the parent was never the parent I wish I had. Or I have to grieve the loss of innocence of myself. because I was hurt badly as a child, maybe, right? So there's different things that are losses that maybe came with the pain that I have to go through and feel and grieve, okay? And there may even have to be a ritual that I design to help me do that, but it's really an individual thing. And so it's fully acknowledging my feelings and validating my feelings, and not just trying to squash them by shoving them away or engaging in target behavior. So letting yourself go through it and feel it is an important part of this process. All right, so next, step 2. So recognizing and validating to a degree of why it's hard to let go. So given that I'm feeling this, I'm recognizing the situation, what's holding me back from letting that go? Why do I keep it around? And chances are it's because part of me is afraid to let it go. That maybe if I'm afraid if I let it go, I'll make myself vulnerable again. And holding on to it helps keep me vigilant in some way and more aware so this, I can protect myself, right? Or maybe I'm afraid if I let it go, the person will somehow come back in my life and, figure that out and catch me again and catch me off guard, right? So I have to figure out, what is it in me that needs to hold on? Does it give me some kind of power? Does it make me feel in control, right? So I have to examine these things and be aware of them. All right, step 3, compassion. So if you remember in one of my other videos, compassion means to suffer with. So I'm having compassion for myself and my pain, self-compassion, and I'm also having compassion for the other person. I know that sounds kind of radical, but you ever hear the expression hurt people hurt people? So chances are the person that hurt you was in pain themselves. They may have been repeating patterns that they learned when they were growing up, and out of ignorance, they hurt you too, right? And even if they did it intentionally, that's still something that's reflecting a problem that they're having. People don't intentionally hurt people when they're happy, right? Happy people don't go around wanting to get revenge on people or be nasty or ruin their lives. It comes from their own pain. So even if you don't know what the pain is, you got to know on some level that there was some pain or ignorance on their part that led them to act the way they acted. And given that we also have our own pain that leads us to act out sometimes, and our own ignorance that leads us to act out sometimes, we can kind of say, you know what, just like I would want people to forgive me for screwing up when I act out of my pain, I'm going to do my best to forgive them for acting out of their pain, right? Even though I feel like they hurt me much more than I must have hurt other people, it's still only fair to say, you know what, suffering with, we both have similar suffering. Even if it's different on the surface. The root is that pain leads us to act out in ways we're not that proud of. And so when I understand that, I could have a little more compassion for the other person. Okay. All right, so step 4 is to try to let this go. Allow yourself to release whatever negativity you have, whatever resentments, obsessions, whatever it is that's going along with it, to try to release it. And in the process, you could also try to twist it around to actually learn something from the situation, maybe learn something about life, about dealing with people, about how you learn how to forgive, which is an important life process, which maybe you could even apply to other things. And you have to deliberately choose peace over resentment. Is this decision to obsess about this bringing me more peace or less peace? Do I value peace more than I value this resentment or this desire for revenge? You got to really think about it. You can't have both. You can't have peace and hold on at the same time. It's just incompatible, right? So you could be right and wrong at the same time. You could be right in holding on to your resentment because, you're correct about that they did something wrong, but you're wrong in the fact that you're screwing up your life. You're wrecking it for yourself. You're creating too much suffering, right? So you got to figure out, where's my priority here? All right, so benefits of forgiveness. You can remind yourself of this too to help you in the process of letting it go. So when you're not holding on to this pain, it frees up a lot of energy, right? Because it takes energy to keep holding on to this stuff, and it even wears you down physically. So you feel like like a weights lifted off your shoulders, like almost literally. You feel lighter, you feel more energetic. You're freer to engage with life in the here and now. You're not weighed down by the past like a ball and chain, you know? And it also increases hope and optimism for the future because when you're free of that, there's much more room for you to have a better life going forward. Okay, more things will occur to you. You'll notice more things that are positive because your energy, your attention's freed up, right? And so you essentially transform yourself from a victim to a survivor. And being a survivor is much more empowering, right? Knowing that I survived a difficult situation and I grew from it is a much more resilient thing to do than to hold on to that victim energy and continue to say, well, poor me and why me and all that stuff. All right. And talking about physical benefits of forgiveness, like check out all these things that get better when people tend to forgive. So forgiveness is actually associated with, physical problems. No, I'm sorry. Lack of forgiveness is associated with physical problems. Forgiveness is associated with lower blood pressure, improved immune function, and reduction in headaches, stomach distress, muscle aches, dizziness, and heart palpitations. Wow, sign me up. You can't even have a pill for that, without side effects. All right, forgiveness can help with all these things because our mind and our body are connected, right? So when we do this emotional work, our body gets healthier too. All right, so I'm going to end you guys with a forgiveness mantra. I got this from Noel Levine, who's from Refuge Recovery, which is a recovery system that's an alternative to 12 steps, and it's based on Buddhist philosophies. And he likes to say, I forgive you, please forgive me, I forgive myself. And he'll meditate and say this mantra over and over again. And he said that you'll notice that if you do this, sometimes when you get into another situation where somebody's bothering you, pushing your buttons, all of a sudden you start to remember this mantra, I forgive you, please forgive me, I forgive myself. And it kind of gets your mind in that forgiveness intention, and it allows it to happen more easily. Okay, so I hope this helps you figure out where you need to forgive a little bit more so that you can lighten up your life, right? And things could get a little easier for you. All right, do yourself this favor, give yourself this gift of forgiveness, and you'll be glad you did. Okay, thanks guys. See you soon. Bye for now.